Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to go over the steps used to create this particular web page, which involve some positioning, a little bit of flexbox, and a number of fixed background images. Okay, so a while back I gave my students a extra credit challenge to make a nice mock-up for this particular web page, and this is a website I stumbled across. It's called the Alexander Bend, and it's pretty nice. I see that there's a fixed header up at the top. There's also a fixed little secondary navigation tool over here, position fixed. Notice the first background image moves with the scroll, and then at some point we get to a place where the background images are fixed, and it creates a pretty pleasing effect. So I just wanted to show you how to do this. Here's my version of it. It's hard to see the fixed background up there, but we have the fixed background, fixed secondary nav, first background image with content moves, just basic placeholder divs, and then of course we have some fixed backgrounds that scroll through with the user. Okay, so this is the mock-up I'd like to create. This is how my page looks right now. It's blank. So over here on the left, I've got my HTML starting off, and I'm just going to do some internal styles just to make it convenient, scroll up and down as we are putting some stuff in. And the first stage of any of this is to kind of look over the plan of action and start to put in the key chunks, the main parts, in the body of the page. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to do that. So definitely there is a header up at the top, so I want to allocate for that. And I'm not worried about all the individual pieces of content in these items. This is just to get the main pieces managed. And I do know that there's this little fixed nav over here without worrying about the details and the behaviors of it. I'll go ahead and use a nav. And then of course we have a main section. I'm just going to use a section tag. And within this section, I'm talking about this one right here, it doesn't really matter if you want, but we can try to put in this content. It is pretty nicely centered horizontally and vertically, so that can be a good exercise. So my main section has this main content. I'm going to put this in its own div, so that way it's easy to position and place exactly where we want it to be. Now I'm just going to account for some of the key blocks down here. Nothing terribly dramatic. And the web page I'm making, by the way, there'll be a link in the video description, so you can just go grab this and review it. Still be a good challenge to make it on your own without reviewing the sample. So I'm going to go ahead and pause my recorder and put in some of these other big chunks. There we go. So I've used section tags a number of places. I've given them classes just to kind of allocate for what the key parts are. No, not a lot of individual content. And you'll see that in some situations I'm using two classes. And that's because these are going to be my fixed background. So you can see I'm using class BGIMG for big image several times because I want all of these elements to have the same styling. But I've also given them a unique class, for instance wine, tree, and hike, and paddleboard, because they will have to have different background images. So you can apply multiple classes to the same element just by putting in the class names separated by a space. There's going to be some characteristics that are the same for all, and some characteristics that are going to be unique. I did create this one section with 3 divs inside just to do a little flexbox example. That'll be 3 boxes side by side, nice and neat in the center of the page. And those are the sections. And I finish off with a footer, which will just be a blank section as well, but I'm using the footer element instead. Now for the tricky part, if you can call it tricky, is to style it. So I'm going to head up to my styles, and you'll see that I've already got a couple rules up here. I've got a reset rule, a generic simple reset rule to set all margin and padding to 0. And I've also just put in a generic background color for the body. I'm going to start off with the header. I like to style things in the order that they appear on the page. So the first thing that I'm going to deal with is the header. That's that fixed bar right across the top. And I'm just going to give it a dark background color. I'm going to do position fixed, which will lock it into place. And even though this is definitely going to be what I want, I always like to start off by positioning something top 0 and left 0 just to see where it is, and then I can move it from there if necessary. And I'm also going to set its width to 100%. Normally a block element like header is already 100% wide, but as soon as you alter its position, it's going to shrink up on itself. So putting in width 100% will counteract that. It'll go all the way across the screen. And I do need a little bit of height on here, so I'll just put in some height. So I'm going to save that, and that should be enough that we can actually start to visualize and see what's going on. So here's my blank page so far. If I refresh, I can now see that I've got that header. Now you can't really appreciate that it's fixed because as I scroll, nothing is moving, but that'll start to appear soon enough. Now for that little nav content. So on my CSS area, I'm going to set up a rule for my contact nav, which is this little nav tag right down here. So I'm going to do an RGBA, consistent RGB values, 0 through 255. That's going to be a medium gray. Let me give it some width and some height. And again, position fixed. Save that, refresh, and that's going to put that contact very nice and neat over on that left side. Perfect. So that's a little bit of position fixed, and once my page is scrollable, we'll be able to appreciate and see that these items are going to stay stationary. I think in the next video, we'll go ahead and continue working on this and put in some of the visual elements like the main section, the contact, and some of our first background images.